Hi, everybody. I'm Grant Duncan. Welcome to another podcast with Politics Happens. This recording is being made on Friday, the 7th of November, 2025. What we're talking about mainly today is the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And I'm really happy to be able to welcome a guest today, Cyril Kutcher. Welcome, Cyril. It's really great that you can join me today.
Kia ora katoa, everyone. Hi, Grant. My pleasure and honor to join you.
Now, Cyril, first of all, can you tell us the correct pronunciation of your name in Ukrainian and tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. My Ukrainian name is Kirill. I grew up in Ukraine. Among my degrees, I hold a degree in international affairs from Massey University. I publish a number of articles in international affairs outlets in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Ukraine.
Can you tell us a few things maybe that you think that people from countries like ours really don't understand very well about Ukraine or about the history or the situation there that you'd like to share with us that you think people really need to know more about?
Starts with misunderstanding of history and of civic realities in Ukraine and of misunderstanding of Russia and its ambitions and its nature, and which leads to the misunderstanding of the war and its far-reaching international implications. And it starts from the terms we're using. So it's very often to hear a conflict, a crisis, and preposition in Ukraine. Yeah, so it all suggests that it's something internal, but in fact, it's the biggest war in Europe, interstate war since the Second World War. Using those terms, they obscure who is the aggressor, and this is in fact interstate war, and it's in fact imperial war of aggression. This is not a first war. Ukrainian struggle against Russians started in 17th century. Back then, Russians were called Muscovites, and their state was called Muscovy. The most interesting and telling comparison would be Russo-Ukrainian War 1918 to 1921. So this was back when Ukraine was previous time independent. Majority of delegates voted for Central Rada, which was Ukrainian parliament, for Ukrainian independence. But Russians didn't like the outcome, so they moved east. They conducted their own vote. They proclaimed Ukrainian Soviet Republic, and in the name of that republic, in January 1918, he invaded Ukraine. Ukraine got Poland on its side, and together they basically defeated the Soviet Russia. But because of internal politics, the Warsaw changed the course, and they decided to sign a Riga Peace Treaty with Moscow and basically split Ukraine. And Ukraine left without resources, without allies, was just annexed, incorporated into the Soviet Union as a Ukrainian Soviet Republic. Right. Ukrainians as a nation were repressed. All the intelligence and all the cultural leaders were repressed and killed. And the most horrific was Holodomor, which is artificial famine unleashed by Stalin on Ukraine.
Right. Yes, the
to
famine.
Starve,
yeah,
famine to starve people, for nearly 6 million Ukrainians. And the interesting fact about it related to New Zealand, New Zealand is the only country of the OECD which has not recognized this famine as an intentional genocide of Ukrainians by Russia.
Right. So, yeah. No, I know many countries have recognized that event as a genocide. Absolutely correct. Yes. However, if I can maybe build a bridge a little bit here, Cyril, would it be fair to say that New Zealand and Ukraine have something in common in the sense that after the breakup of the Soviet Union, the formation of a independent sovereign state of Ukraine, part of that process, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. And so in a sense, maybe I'm sort of pushing it here a little bit, but do New Zealand and Ukraine have something in common in the sense that they sort of have a nuclear-free policy, or is that just trying a little bit too hard?
Well, Ukraine still used nuclear power for producing electricity. So the largest nuclear plant is in Ukraine. It's currently occupied by Russia, Zaporizhia, and it's kind of nuclear threat for the region. If something happened, it can be another Chernobyl. But yes, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapon, which apparently was a mistake. Yeah, but as a young nation which wanted to prove itself, to pursue democratic values, to be a reliable partner for the Western countries, which Ukrainian nation and people pursued. They made the deal in exchange of security assurance, and security assurance was from Russia, but also from United Kingdom and United States. And as we see, that security assurances meant nothing, and taking nuclear weapon, Russia untied its hands to attack Ukraine. And it's seen as a mistake by many other nations, smaller nations now, which observe this war. They understand that the international norms stopped carrying real power. Every other nation which is small enough can be next. So other nations also start to thinking about regaining nuclear weapon as a Ukraine.
Now, let me get on to your book, which is featured on your wallpaper and your behind you there. The title of the book, Z Empire, or if you're American, Z Empire Unmasked, War at the Heart of a Fracturing World. And I should mention too that your book has a foreword by the Ukrainian ambassador. But just getting on to your book, your main argument in the book is that the what is happening in the conflict between or the invasion by Russia of Ukrainian territory. It's not just you're arguing that it shouldn't be seen as just another regional conflict, but instead it's, as you put it, a resurgent imperialism. It's a fight. It's an imperial power fighting against a rules-based order. Now, that's, I guess, paraphrasing from the introduction to your book. But let's unpack that a little bit. And first of all, perhaps describe this imperialism, this resurgent imperialism that's the theme of your book.
So yeah, I argue that Russia is still an empire and it's still ambitious and hungry for domination. They think that there are only big civilizations and big countries who are entitled to the concept of sovereignty, and their aim is to expand the Russian world. So, for example, in beginning of 1990s, Moldova attacked Moldova. I'm talking about Transnistria.
That Transnistria is that little sort of corridor of land in between, which actually borders Ukraine, the western side of Ukraine, doesn't it? And it's essentially a sliver of land in Moldova that's, in a sense, a kind of quasi-state at this stage, I think.
Since 1991, 1990, they use this territory for hosting their own military forces and threatening both Moldova and Ukraine.
Right, yes. So, yeah, and I think probably not many listeners know about Transnistria, but it's certainly one worth looking up. But I think you also mentioned other areas like Chechnya, Georgia, but also, of course, Russia is acting further afield. It's been into Syria and a good deal of Africa. So, you've used the term Z Empire or Z Empire. Why the letter Z or Z? What's the significance of that?
Yeah, so this is a symbol of their mobilization for war and of aggression. And basically, it represents the ideology of aggression out of the country, and this is a symbol which Russians themselves united behind. Since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. First, we spotted these signs on the tanks, but then on the Russian media, all the society uniting pro-war, pro-Putin, arguing that this is regaining of lost territories. So basically, for me, this symbol, and for Ukrainians, it represents similar what for European represented Nazi swastika.
Yeah. Now, tell us a little bit about Ukrainians in New Zealand, because I do recall when the February invasion, the full-scale invasion in February 2022 occurred, going downtown and joining a small but lively protest of local Ukrainians, our local Ukrainian community down in the Aotearoa Centre. I don't know, maybe you were there. I'm not quite sure, but it made me aware that we do have a lively Ukrainian community in Auckland and in New Zealand generally. How are people here, how are Ukrainians here feeling about or responding to this situation in their home country?
Ukrainians here support Ukrainians in Ukraine by means we can. Individuals petitioned Parliament for help for visas, for humanitarian visas.
Oh,
We organized exhibition to educate New Zealanders about this war and about Russian threat. So creative Ukrainians did many of those events, and this was on top of already pre-existing communities. We had a few regional ones, and also communities, grassroots initiatives such as Friends of Ukraine, people united to start making stalls on the Britomart market, which happens every other Saturday, to sell Ukrainian, to introduce Ukrainian cuisine, Ukrainian food, sell it, and with proceeds from those sales, help Ukrainians in Ukraine. And another fascinating initiative is radio podcast, which started in Dunedin on Otago Radio, which called the Borscht Club. And borscht is the most traditional Ukrainian dish. It's a beetroot soup, in simplifying. So it's called Borscht Club, and it's all about Ukraine, Ukrainian culture, Ukrainians in New Zealand, and war as well.
so yeah, hopefully a few listeners will go along to some of those events and support the local Ukrainian community. Um, and I think, do you think there's a danger, unfortunately, that people become less aware of the ongoing conflict because the front line isn't moving an awful lot, but it's certainly an ongoing war. Uh, but in terms of people's awareness in New Zealand or in similar countries through the media, do you think there's maybe a danger of this becoming a kind of forgotten war because it's falling off the media agenda, getting less prominent coverage, and maybe people sort of thinking that somehow it's cooled down or it's kind of stopped or something? Is there a danger of that, do you think?
Well, yes, as a New Zealander, what I'm concerned of is with the complacency about peace, about being so distant and having this natural barrier of oceans that no trouble will reach us, but also complacency with lies and propaganda, which is treated as an opinion instead of acting and preempting it. Ukrainians and those who understand Russia, and this is pretty much all the Eastern Europe, they will not forgive Russians for generations to come. And in my view, the destiny of the world order rests now in Ukraine. If Ukraine falls, Russia and its autocratic allies will proceed with further conquests, with further remaking of the world order into the might makes right? So all of those countries, among whom New Zealand, Australia, Ukraine, we all, and people of these countries, all pro-democracy and pro-democratic values, freedom, liberty, rule of law. And we must stand united and help defend this barrier, prevent from it becoming a world war.
Yeah, which comes back to that key theme in your book, doesn't it? That it's a conflict between a resurgent imperialism, as you put it, and a rules-based order. And I think that, you're absolutely on the nail there because a country like New Zealand depends heavily on the rules-based order because we're not a country that is able to make the rules, so to speak, in the international order. We depend on friendships, alliances, and people acting within the rules. And so you're absolutely right, I think, and many commentators have said similarly that the behavior of the Russian regime is well, it's completely out of order. It's simply illegal, and it's, as you say, prosecuting imperial ambitions, which have some historical legacy. But on the other hand, in the post-World War II era, the idea was that we would have a rules-based order that would aim towards peace and to prevent this kind of conflict from occurring. So I think you're absolutely right that the conflict that we're talking about here is something that everybody should be keeping a close watch on, not forgetting about, and doing what they can to support Ukrainians in defending their territory.
It's also learning. There is much to learn from Ukrainians, and this is happening. For example, so Ukrainians basically on the front edge of the technology development. So war pushes technology innovations, but also technology reshapes this war. And drones, and this is now being called drone war, and future wars will be drone wars. So there is a lot to learn from Ukrainians who used it very effectively, and also communications. I think not many know that during the Cyclone Gabriela emergency response, we used base stations to provide mobile coverage connection for people using the Starlink satellite connection. But the pioneers of that were Ukrainians during the war, and sharing their experience with New Zealanders helped New Zealand to react faster and probably save more lives.
Yeah. So, although, I mean, no one wants a war and it's always a regrettable thing, but often what comes out of a war, as you say, is maybe some kind of technological innovation, which may also have some helpful applications in peacetime as well. And so, yes, you're right. I think we can look to Ukrainians for some learning about new technologies. But yes, one of the regrettable features of this war is regrettable in the sense of the front line is now basically a drone surveilled front line, as I understand it.
Towns in eastern Ukraine are annihilated, literally. Russia can't hope for the easy victory. It didn't get it. Ukrainians stand grounds, not because victory is certain, but because submission is unthinkable. Because Ukrainians know what will happen to them if they submit. So genocide will repeat itself. For Ukrainians, it's a real threat, and a threat which all Eastern Europeans realize.
Well, certainly, to speak in sympathy with what you've just said, I mean, some of the war crimes that the Russian forces and Vladimir Putin himself are accused of, particularly in relation, for instance, to the abduction of children, those sorts of war crimes are really serious, and they do contribute to a case which could one day be a case of genocide. So yes, we do have to take those kinds of things seriously. Well, probably we should wrap this up now, Cyril. But is there anything further you want to kind of say before we close off?
Yeah, I want to say that while there is no world war, this is in power of every nation to prevent it, to stand together with those who fight, help them diplomatically, isolating the aggressor, with economic sanctions, helping Ukrainian fight, but also thinking about own defense. And New Zealand must be prepared. New Zealand must rethink alliances, invest more in defense, innovative defense. And another characteristic of this war is being hybrid. It's also informational war, and we must not forget about it. And we must come up with tools which will help us defend ourselves, our minds from it.
And so to pick up actually on a point that you raised before, and I think which is of use to anyone who's listening to this, is to be really aware that there is a lot of misinformation being pumped out there on social media, and just be aware, just be careful about what you consume and what you do or don't believe in terms of what you see on social media, because yes, this is an information war as much as anything. And I think one of the strategies of contemporary information war is not necessarily to make people believe something, but simply to sow doubt in their minds about something. And it seems to me that the Russians are actually quite adept at doing that. So just be aware of what you might be viewing. Um, anyway, look, Cyril, where can listeners find your book, which is displayed behind you?
Oh, yeah, it's easy. It's available on Amazon, hardcover and paperback, full color. And also it will be available on the upcoming New Zealand Institute of International Affairs event,
Mm.
linked to the book.
Hey, thanks so much, Cyril, for joining us. And I guess just a sort of closing message for listeners. Um, well, first of all, download Cyril's book from Amazon as he suggested, and but also, let's keep thinking about the nature of this conflict. Don't see it, as you've said, as merely a regional conflict, a scrap between neighbours, so to speak. It has much greater significance than that. And there are things that I think, we can all be doing to support our Ukrainian neighbours in New Zealand, but also to be raising awareness of the nature of the conflict, talking to maybe politicians in New Zealand about what we can do to increase at least some kind of diplomatic pressure to get this matter resolved properly. Um, and of course, I guess the proper resolution, of course, would be ultimately for Russian forces simply to withdraw from the territory that they're illegally occupying. But maybe we'll save that conversation for another day, Cyril, as to what the appropriate outcome of this conflict should be.
Military defeat and prosecution of the aggressor. This is the only path to peace.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, and thank you for
Thank you.
joining
Thank you,
us.
Grant.
Yeah, okay, and take care.